Alright, so I just wanted to leave this subject alone after my video, but something came up in my suggested feed on YouTube and I just couldn't resist. It's from Democracy Now!, which poorly tries to pass itself off as a news channel. In the video, you see Amy Goodman interviewing Charlie Swift, the physical embodiment of why everyone hates lawyers, and the attorney arguing for Hoda Muthana to be rescued by the United States from a Syrian refugee camp and returned to the United States. The video is beyond infuriating with many half-truths, false analogies, and other infuriating things, and I decided to torture myself in order to give the interview some context, pushback, and overall clarity that this channel simply couldn't do. Just as a disclaimer, this video is sped up, partly due to any potential unlawful takedowns, and partly because this guy goes on long-winded and slow rants, so I wanted to cover as much context into what he was saying as possible.
When I was 17, I had an account on Twitter, and we were all just normal Muslims speaking together, and we were just learning off of each other, feeding off of each other. We heard the caliphate was announced, and then we interpreted ourselves that it was obligatory upon us to go.
So before the interview even begins, we get some damning interview footage claiming all normal Muslims go online and easily get convinced about joining groups like ISIS. Probably not the best image to promote of her before trying to defend her.
The dispute over Hoda Muthana's citizenship centers on her father, who is a Yemeni diplomat based in the United States, and whether he still had diplomatic status in the U.S. at the time of her birth in October of 1994. According to the Constitution, everyone born in the U.S. is granted citizenship with the exception of children of diplomats, as they don't fall under U.S. jurisdiction. Muthana's attorneys insist she does hold U.S. citizenship. She was born in Hackensack, New Jersey, October 28, 1994, after her father had relinquished his diplomatic status more than a month before. The United States issued her a passport in 2005, renewed it in 2014, but in 2016, the Obama administration sent her a letter saying her passport was no longer valid. On Thursday, Muthana's family filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration to allow her and her son to come back to the U.S.
So skipping past a few previous details, an alarming piece of evidence comes up here that is easily brushed aside. Despite laying the blame entirely on the Trump administration for the mess she is in, the legal issue began in 2016. When arriving in Syria, Hoda burned her passport and tweeted photos along with other women from the West claiming to no longer need them. The Obama administration had responded to these events by declaring her original passport was not valid to begin with in a letter to the family. The original passport was challenged by the US government in 2005, but was ultimately dropped, allowing her to get her passport. Now, 3 years later, with her terrorist organization crumbling, the lawsuit comes forth to challenge the constitutionality of this ruling. Already, the case for her looks pathetic, waiting nearly 3 years to challenge a ruling on her citizenship.
You've hit on the pertinent facts. The 14th Amendment gives anyone born in the United States or naturalized who is subject to jurisdiction of the courts citizenship. Now, subject to jurisdiction was a phrase that was used for diplomats. In other words, diplomats who have diplomatic immunity are not subject to the jurisdiction of U.S. courts. However, Hoda Muthana's father was discharged from that position, and diplomatic immunity isn't personal. It follows it is part of the position you hold. If you're a diplomat in a foreign country, you have it by virtue of the position that you hold having been recognized by that country, or in this country by the United States. In Hoda Muthana's case, Ali Muthana, her father had been discharged on 1 September, and she wasn't born until the 23rd of October. And I want you to think about it this way, if you have any question. Let's say instead of Hoda Muthana being born on October 23rd, Ali Muthana had walked into a convenience store, held it up, and shot the clerk. Something he'd never do. He's an incredibly law-abiding citizen, but for purposes of this, let's use that hypothetical. Now, let's seriously consider, he's out of his position. He's been discharged for more than almost 53 days. Are we going to say he has diplomatic immunity? Not a chance. It's not a closed question. The courts have looked at this.
Okay, this clip will continue to go, but first I want to deal with this false equivalency. A pregnancy is not something that happens overnight. You do not have sex on one night and 3 days later a baby pops out. So the idea of robbing and killing a man does not work in this situation. What would happen here is more like he committed insider trading for 9 months. 53 days after being discharged from his post, he gets caught and the legal case goes back to when he had the diplomatic immunity. Can he be charged for the insider trading then? The proper analogy does not give such a clear-cut answer.
He'd have a reasonable period of time to leave the country, but if he had, which is generally defined as 30 days, but he hadn't left the country, didn't have any intent to leave the country, he's now subject to the jurisdiction of the courts.
So in trying to defend the family, the lawyer admitted the father committed a crime. He had 30 days after being discharged from his position to leave the country, but stayed for an additional 23 days to have a child on U.S. soil. I wonder why her citizen was ever up for question in this instance.
And therefore his daughter, his family, is subject to jurisdiction of the courts, and she is a citizen. And everybody thought she was a citizen. She was issued not one but two passports. The State Department recognized that that Ali Muthana had been discharged. It wasn't until after she made an incredibly bad decision, one that her family has urged her against from the beginning. They didn't know she was leaving, but they've cooperated with authorities to try and get her back since she left, that this even came up.
Okay, this is a straight-up lie here, which is no surprise coming from stereotypical lawyer. According to Vox, Muthana was challenged upon getting her first passport. She managed to get it, but then later had it revoked by the Obama administration 9 years later. Her citizenship was never a clear-cut question from the start.
That she doesn't have the ability to travel. So one of the reasons we're going to court is to seek the court to aid her in her return. The Supreme Court said that any U.S. citizen has the right to re-enter. That's an absolute. And citizenship can only be lost under very limited circumstances, and it's always a judicial matter. It can't be done by the executive simply saying, you're not a citizen anymore. And
I wonder how she lost her passport. Oh right, she burned it and tweeted out the photo of never needing the passport anymore. That is an action of voluntarily giving up or renouncing your U.S. citizenship, which is legal status. You can also lose the citizenship if you commit an act of treason against the United States. BuzzFeed kept a tweet in her profile back in 2015 of her calling for the death of Americans on American soil and encouraging terrorism. The act of treason in the Constitution states that those who side with others in attacking their own country deal with acts of terrorism. Both of these facts are more than enough for her to lose her rights to citizenship.
And the implications are tremendous. First part, if you're going to be comfortable with what's happened to hers, imagine another U.S. citizen is outside the country saying and doing things that the United States doesn't like. So they just say, you know what? We don't believe her birth certificate. Or his birth certificate. We question it. We're sending you a letter saying, I don't think your birth certificate was valid. You're revoked. You can't come back. And by the way, you can't come to a court here because your passport's been revoked. You can't come back into the United States. We've closed the door. The implications are significant. And in fact, we've been hearing at the center about these very same letters being used for persons who were born in the United States to midwives, but we're now revoking their citizenship by letter.
So this clip builds on the previously debunked clip, but it's important to get this one answered as well. He states that others are getting letters revoking their citizenship through letters being married to midwives. That seems to be the bigger issue here that he seems to be arguing for. I want to know more details on their citizenship being revoked, but a brief mention of it while lying so far in your interview does not give me great confidence that you are stating the entire facts of these other cases.
So that's Hoda Muthana speaking on ABC. Charles Swift,
yes.
Talk about her story. Talk about why Hoda left this country, about her wanting to join ISIS, going to Syria, marrying 3 different ISIS fighters as they died, having this son. Why did she join ISIS?
I don't have an answer to that. Her parents don't have an answer to that in the process in it. For me, the issues here are constitutional. The revocation of citizenship, which the Supreme Court has said is never a valid punishment. So I look at that part. I think it's noteworthy, though. Hoda Muthana may hope that she doesn't get punished or get jail time. I've been a criminal defense attorney for most of my life, as well as working on civil rights, and all of my clients hope they won't go to jail. I would say, though, that one of the things that she's doing by pursuing to come back here is making herself eligible to go to jail. She puts herself in, by filing this suit, the defense to her actions, the best defense on going over is that she wasn't a U.S. citizen. Almost all the statutes under which, I think all the statutes under which she could be charged, all require for extraterritoriality that the crime either originate in the United States or that she be a U.S. citizen. And since the crime didn't occur till she got over there, and if she's not a U.S. citizen, there would be no jurisdiction to try her for the criminal offenses. By establishing her citizenship, she actually makes herself eligible for trial and punishment. Something, her parents are fully aware of that. Her father fully aware of it, and he thinks that she should face justice. And if she's convicted of something, she should serve the time for it. But he also believes that his grandson and she are still citizens and should be able to return.
I actually have nothing to dispute here. Legally speaking, everything he said is correct. The ABC interview was very infuriating and makes me want to express more rage for the fake tears the ISIS brides are trying to give to come home, but that was addressed in a previous video.
I wanted to read one of her inflammatory tweets when she was in Syria. She wrote, "Americans, wake up, men and women all together. You have much to do while you live under our greatest enemy. Enough of your sleeping. Go on drive-bys, spill all of their blood, or rent a big truck and drive all over them. Veterans, Patriots, Memorial, etc. Day. Kill them." Charlie Swift.
Yep. And the question is whether that's criminal or not. But my concern is if you strip your citizenship for it. See, there's a very strong idea. This is that plays in over time. That if you're disloyal to the country, then you should lose your citizenship. That's how the British approach it. It's not how the United States approaches it, because we've had this absolute belief in free speech. Speech can become criminal. You can be punished for it, but we've never stripped citizenship. So I'd like to change that a little. What if the administration later on says that anyone who does not support the current administration is creating treason? That their speech is hurting America, and we're going to strip you of citizenship for it. The 14th Amendment's absolute. If you're going to strip somebody based on their words, where's your line, Mamie? Where's your line?
And just after being legally sound, you go back to lying, Charlie. That tweet isn't offensive speech protected under the First Amendment. The First Amendment doesn't protect you from things that lead to violence. Yelling fire in a crowded movie theater does not get protected under First Amendment rights. This is, under the Constitution's very definition, an act of treason that can strip her of her citizenship. You can't come close to comparing that to an administration taking away citizenship from people who say mean things about them abroad. Frankly, it's extremely disingenuous to make the comparison.
Well, let's turn...
See, the issues here, this is the problem. The issues are always bigger than the person. The issues weren't Miranda's guilt. The issues here on the part are our constitutional foundations. And how we treat Hoda Muthana says a great deal about who we are as a nation.
This is more than just about her, Chucky. You're right. It's about how we deal with terrorists who commit acts of treason abroad. What should have been dealt with in the Boston bombers incident can now be dealt with here with citizens who go abroad and correct the previous error. Terrorist acts should be considered treasonous and punished accordingly. Revoking citizenship is one of those punishments.
I read the papers and I know, in fact, that I was a citizen. And when I tried filing for a passport, it was very easy. It came in 10 days. So I thought I didn't have a problem. And I'm sure there's no problem. And I know my lawyer, hopefully, is working on it. And he will win the case.
Do you think you'll be able to go back to the United States? Do you want to go to the United States?
I prefer America other than anywhere else, yeah.
And what do you want to do if you went back to the States? What do you think will happen to you if you were allowed to go back?
Of course, I'll be given jail time.
This clip deals more with the interview with Hoda Muthana than anything. She is either lying or doesn't remember getting her first passport in 2005, as it was found, by Vox of all people, that her statement wasn't true. And her expectations of jail time should be raised way higher. Her hope should be life in jail. Expectations should be that a jury of her peers is deciding on whether or not she will be put to death, if her citizenship is somehow given back to her.
Shamima Begum is in a similar situation. Her citizenship was revoked by the UK. She fled to Syria from London when she was 15. Your response to the two?
Well, she's in a similar situation until we get to what country she's from. The British and the Americans. Now, I like the British, but I'm very proud to be an American. And at the time of our founding and afterwards, we put in place a constitution because of the very types of abuses that we thought were wrong in Britain. Britain threw around the word treason too easily. It stripped citizenship. It banished people. That's what it did. That was part of its government system. The founding fathers of the United States were having none of that. We set up a constitutional republic under the Constitution. We don't swear allegiance to a queen. We swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America. And the Constitution in here is clear. The Constitution is not for bright, sunny days. It's for rainy ones. It's for the unpopular. The popular don't need it.
Nice pandering there, Chuck, but 5 minutes of digging and 15 minutes of verifying show that this is all a bunch of bull. Begum is in a different world of mess with international court of law. Britain, under its current rules, is not allowed to strip citizenship unless they are a dual national. Currently, Begum is eligible for Bangladeshi citizenship through her mother, which gave Britain the right to strip her of her citizenship. Now, the fight with her is whether or not she can get Bangladeshi citizenship, as Bangladesh has said she will not get the citizenship and she has never visited the country. But the British have this weird notion, Charles, that joining a terrorist organization and declaring to be an enemy of Britain is a treasonous act. Oh wait, found it here in our Constitution as well. Never mind.
Well, Charlie Swift, we want to thank you for being with us, the attorney for Hoda Muthana's family. He is the director of the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America.
Ah, that explains it. You went on whatever news show, and I put that in hard quotes, would allow you to try and gain sympathy for Hoda Muthana. It wasn't about being factually correct, just as long as you can build up sympathy to try and win in the public court of opinions. Good luck, Chuck. You're gonna need it. So I had to make this video after seeing the lawyer defending this family. His case may have some merit in the original ruling that her citizenship could not be revoked, but through researching her case, I have found that she has done 2 acts that allow for the US government to strip you of your citizenship. It is frankly disturbing, and lawyers like this give all lawyers a bad name. Now it's time for me to continue yelling into the void.